All right, guys, I put up one training video and now people are tripping. No, not really. They're tripping a little bit, but I want to talk about it. Let me read the question for you. And this is a question that's on a drill video where it's you're walking and shooting targets, dealing with vision barriers, that kind of thing. Just a little bit of shooting on the move. Okay. He says, this is very interesting. Do you find you end up taking shots with one foot on the ground and the other in the air? I've noticed that when I shoot while walking, my foot strikes the ground and my dot shakes like crazy. Sometimes I commit to pulling the trigger, then the foot hits the ground and I miss. So I start consciously taking shots while one foot is up. But I also suck at shooting on the move, so maybe I answered my own question. Any thoughts? Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I'm going to go through that question. I'll parse it out. But at first, I want to read one guy replied to him. He's like, I've heard something similar too. Shoot when your foot is up. Don't shoot when your foot lands on the ground. It doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I just don't have the mental capacity to process something like that in speed. But for me, lowering the center of gravity and walking smoothly works better than trying to time the shooting to my feet. Yeah. And that's a pretty good answer. But like I said, we'll parse it out. Okay. So, first, do you find you end up taking shots with one foot on the ground and one foot in the air? Yes, I do find I do that. So the way that I think about it, um, I'm gonna like be looking at a spot or aiming. Imagine I'm walking, and when I recognize, hey, the sight's where I want, I'm gonna react to that and pull the trigger. Now, it doesn't really matter to me like what the circumstances are or how I feel. So, for example, if I have an extreme lean, I would treat it the same. You know, people as they're trying to do this stuff quickly, when their body starts to feel uncomfortable, they tend to start reacting to that and start over confirming or over aiming. So I don't want to do that. I don't want to be over confirming. All right. So, like what I mean is, if the foot's in the air, sight flashes where I want on the target, I'm going to react and pull the trigger. Absolutely. I'm going to end up doing that. Now, is that my goal? Am I consciously trying to do that? No. What I'm trying to do is react to what I see. But yeah, I'm going to shoot with a foot in the air. That's the way it's going to work. Let's go to the next statement. I notice when I shoot while walking, when my foot strikes the ground, my dot shakes like crazy. Yeah, that's going to happen. So let me make an example for you. If I take my hands and put them together, it could be like this, where it's a clap, or it could be like this, where I put them together quickly, but I'm not smacking them together. You want to do the second thing while you're shooting on the move. People call it the roll step, where like roll your foot on the ground, then roll it off the ground, or however you want to conceptualize it. Some guys they focus on bending their knees, get down low, like use them as shock absorbers, and that helps them smooth things out. Um, but you do need the technique you need here is walking smoothly. And when you use the word strike, when my foot strikes the ground, my dot shakes like crazy. Well, you don't need to strike your foot into the ground. Just set it on the ground gently. Now, there's another piece of this as well, though, and that's your dot is going to be shaking. So if you're shooting a red dot, especially, you're going to be aware that the sight's moving. Um, that part you probably want to ignore. And what I mean is, your sight's never really going to sit still. So if your dot is going to sit there and kind of float, like if I'm standing still, my dot will float here. And if I'm moving, like maybe it'll start like bouncing like this a little bit. Um, Typically when I'm shooting on the move, the targets are going to be close enough that I'm shooting color confirmation anyway. So if I just see a flash of the color, I'm going to react and start shooting. Um, but there's always going to be a little bit of movement in the dot. And like I said, you want to ignore that. Apart from if you bang your foot in the ground, you see the sight bounce down. That you don't want to ignore. But just like that little wobble as you're moving, that you do want to be trained to ignore because you just react to the color, pull the trigger, you accept, hey, the sight picture is not really going to get better than that. It's just going to be floating there, that kind of thing. Okay, let's go to the next part of this. Sometimes I commit to pulling the trigger, then the foot hits the ground and I miss. So I started consciously taking shots while one foot is up. Okay, Yeah, so if you start doing this, if you go down this rabbit hole where you're not conscious of the specific shooting mechanics like target focus, looking at a spot. Now is like his conscious brain is on like timing the feet, like, oh, this foot up, now pull the trigger, put this foot down, this foot up, now pull the trigger. This is not a good way to be training because you're thinking about the wrong things, you're focused on the wrong things, and you're not really solving the problem. You're not the problem is, hey, walk relatively smoothly, don't strike the ground with your feet, target focus, accept that the sight's going to wobble. You're doing all the wrong things. You'd be like, oh, focus on timing the shots with your feet. And if you do that right, the dot will be perfectly stable at the time you pull the trigger. And then your foot strikes the ground and then it'll be shaking. You don't shoot then, but then the dot will smooth out again and then you pull the trigger. Like that's where your thought process is going to go. And that's not going to be very helpful. And let's go to the last statement. But I also suck at shooting on the move, so maybe I answered my own question. Well, yeah, you do suck at shooting on the move, and that's okay. That's not a problem. But you want to solve this problem by training the right concepts, which should be like the stuff that I'm talking about. Accept the sight will wobble. Focus on the target. Bend your knees a little bit. Lower yourself down. Try to walk smoothly, and then shoot with appropriate confirmation. That put your head on that and train a little bit, give it some time, and you'll improve. But if you think you're just gonna like be bad at shooting on the move and then like adopt a technique, like, oh, I'll just time the shots when my feet aren't hitting the ground, I'll change technique. That's probably not gonna work. You wanna get your head on the right things and train the correct skills. Anyway, that's my view of it. That I thought it would be good to answer that question. Because my God, I don't want people going down that rabbit hole.